And now, AFRSO, Additive Olympic Panel.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Dennis Butcher. I'm the government program manager for America Makes, and based out of the Air Force Research Laboratory in Dayton, Ohio. And here we're here to talk to you today about an exciting event we had back in late October called the Advanced Manufacturing Olympics. And so we have with us a few different participants and organizers for that that'll hopefully provide you some good perspectives on what the event was, what we did there, and what we think some of the great outcomes from that were that you can hopefully find some connections to from your own organization's perspective. So, I'll start off just to describe a little bit about what this event was, so we can have the same grounding. Basically, the Air Force Research Laboratory and the Rapid Sustainment Office really worked together to fulfill the vision of our acquisition executive, Dr. Will Roper, who really challenged us to come up with an innovative way to engage with industry. Seek new types of partnerships, really try to glean what we can from the great, commercial innovations that are out there and try and integrate that into how we use these technologies in the Air Force. And so that was kind of the birthplace of an event called, the Advanced Manufacturing Olympics. And over time, we really oriented that to, focus in a little bit more closely on sustainment challenges, since that is really a key area of investment for us right now, and that's where really the Rapid Sustainment Office focuses all their energy is helping us find great technical solutions to sustaining our fleets. And so, we really wanted to find a way to engage with these commercial solutions, find new suppliers that can provide solutions that we haven't even thought of yet, and we built some technical challenges around some of the key pain points that we've been feeling in the Air Force to let industry know where we need help and not really prescribe a solution, but really let industry come to us with what they think are some new areas and new approaches that can work. So we kind of reverse things a little bit, rather than set out some requirements up front that might really limit the universe of solutions that we receive. And so what we ended up with was really a couple different types of activity with the Olympics. We had the technical challenges, that there's a lot of great data and information and kind of market research that we got in the Air Force, as well as more of a higher level discussion with panels and keynote discussions, talking about some of the bigger challenges in advanced manufacturing and some of the bigger themes that the Air Force and industry together are going to have to move out on moving forward. So hopefully we focused some good discussion there on some critical topics. So for the technical challenges, we really focused on understanding new materials. We had an event called Materials Hurdles that took a look at new aluminum alloys and how those might be applied versus other currently used aluminum alloys for additive manufacturing, because we need to take steps beyond those alloys right now to really integrate that into our parts. We had an event called the TDP Relay that looked at taking a technical data package from one additive manufacturing machine and being able to transform it to another so that we don't get ourselves vendor locked in the Air Force, so that we can be much more agile in who we can source our parts from. An event called the Supply Chain Marathon, which we have really took a close look at, what are some basing and logistical approaches that utilize these new technologies in a way that we aren't really thinking about right now. We took a look at certification through our F-16 approval sprints challenge that really looked to rethink how we do certification in the Air Force. What are some new sensing and monitoring techniques that we can use to bring some more agility to the process, rather than the kind of make and break approach that we do now. And then finally, a look at reverse engineering through the Box of Parts challenge, that really tries to bring in new ideas, new approaches to reverse engineering in a way that makes it more accessible for airmen and our industrial partners. So hopefully we'll hear a little bit more about that as we move forward through the panel. But just wanted to provide that grounding for what some of the key aspects of the AMO was. And we'll get more into that as we introduce the panel. And before we do that, I just also want to thank the team that helped organize that, especially the Rapid Sustainment Office, who was the host and lead organizer. My colleagues at AFRL, who helped provide some technical guidance and judging and other aspects of organizing. The University of Dayton Research Institute, which really put a lot of the technical challenges into practice. And then America Makes and the Wright Brothers Institute to really help us reach out to the industrial base and provide some help organizing the events and actually executing and providing some of the awards. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our first panelist. We have Ms. Lily Arcusa. She's the Director of Engineering for Presidential and Executive Airlift Directorate. And she, until the last day of the event, was also the Chief Technical Officer for the Rapid Sustainment Office. So Lily, if you'd like to say a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dennis. And hearing you describe each of those challenges, I mean, that's what we've been working on for the last 14 months or so. So it's just so great to hear those all recapped so well. So thank you. And I, of course, echo your thanks to all our team members. We had a great team that was able to pull that off. So until very recently, as Dennis mentioned, I was the Chief Technology Officer and Director of Engineering for the Air Force's Rapid Sustainment Office, located at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. My whole career has been in aircraft program offices. So this office is a little bit different. It's sort of at an enterprise level. So instead of working with individual programs and aircraft specifically, we're working to provide capabilities to the entire Air Force enterprise, and working with our sister services to look for opportunities at the DoD level as well. I was specifically involved in the Advanced Manufacturing Olympics, or AMO, as we often call it, to shorten that name. From the beginning, I led the creative development of these challenges, trying to figure out what would an Olympics mean for us in terms of advanced manufacturing. And really at this point, we sort of focused on the 3D printing elements of that. So I was part of figuring out what these events should look like with help from AFRL and America Makes, designing them, managing the execution with our partners at UDRI, reviewing all of the application videos, selecting the teams that would participate in each of the events, and then of course reviewing all of their submissions and guiding the judging and the scoring. I worked with all of the judges to first figure out who they should be, and they were picked very specifically to get certain aspects and perspectives together that really kind of got us outside of our own comfort zone. And even down to guiding the video production of the videos of the events that were shown at the end. So it was kind of a broad range of activities that I did over that year of production. So thanks, Dennis, for the introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Lily. Next, we've got John Lozinski. He is the Executive Director of America Makes, which is, if you don't know, it's the National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Institute.
Thank you, sir. So good morning, everyone. So if you're not familiar, America Makes is working on some very similar to things that the AMO is trying to ultimately accomplish. So our mission is to increase the adoption of additive manufacturing by convening, coordinating, and catalyzing the industry. And what does that mean? So we're really focused on trying to bring people together to solve problems, which is very similar to what the ultimate goal of AMO was. So they took this approach, which we're fortunate enough to be part of from the very beginning, in some ways dreaming up what are the challenges. We saw very close alignment to work that we're doing at the Institute. So we've developed a technical roadmap, and some of the big challenges that are identified there were directly addressed, but they took this, a challenge approach, which is, unconventional in some ways, in trying to identify players, identify solutions versus conventionally contracting against a statement of work, against an RFP that somebody has delivered. So it's a way which I got tremendous value. I think everyone did in the end out of was bringing all of these ideas. Some of the folks we knew, others we maybe weren't that familiar with, but we were able to collectively, and I will say, RSO and the team there really did the, lion's share of the work with UDRI, pulling those challenges together. But in the end, delivered results that all of us can build on. And I think that's what we're all actively looking to do now is what's next? How do we take this information and do something with it? So thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks, John. And last we have Joel Neidig. He is the founder and CEO of a small company called SymbaChain, and they actually were a competitor and winner of one of the events, the Supply Chain Marathon. So, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. So my name is Joel Neidig. I'm a co-founder and CEO of SymbaChain, and we had I saw this article in Wired magazine back in December of last year, and I was like, I didn't think I was, I emailed a few people. I'm like, hey, this would be really cool because it was about the Advanced Manufacturing Olympics that the AFRSO and the Air Force are going to put on, and I was like, this would be really cool to enter into. So then we anyway, it came out, and then we put a team together, and we got accepted, which we couldn't believe. Like we were ecstatic just to like be part of the participants. And then we finally got down selected the last two, and then we, ended up winning all when the last day when it was announced. So it was exciting. I mean, it was a whirlwind time. Our team, we had like, I think over 20 different people on our team to try and bring, everything together and ideas. And we had, from the time they gave us the solution or, the problem, we had 6 days to build the solution. And it was incredible. So we just had it was just fun just doing it. But then to win was like just amazing. So just had a great time. And our solution was really wanted to bring additive manufacturing, rapid manufacturing to the edge. And so that's what we did with these rapid labs that were basically Connex containers, but they had everything they needed to reverse engineer, build, additively manufacture, post-process at the simulation area where we did the war game in the Supply Chain Marathon. So, and then we just expanded that out into a greater way of decentralization to not, have a single attack vector, which is, a lot of times is what can take you down if the enemy can identify one single, link in the supply chain to take you down. That's what they'll focus on. So really tried to distribute that, and so it was exciting, and we were just ecstatic to win and even participate.
Great, thanks, Joel. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you guys had such a great experience with the Olympics. I know, and working with the RSO, we really are happy to see that. We were really trying to have an engaging event for both, the Air Force and what we learned, but also the participants. I think maybe what I'll start off with is kind of an open-ended question. For all of us, we've now had a few weeks to kind of sit back and digest, what we saw, what we learned at the Advanced Manufacturing Olympics. And I'm wondering what sticks out with each of you about what we saw there. Maybe I'll start with Lily. When you think of the AMO, what comes to mind and is the most exciting or impactful?
Yeah, I think the best thing about it was seeing the variety of solutions. We in the Air Force kind of get focused on specific things, and of course, you can't always look at everything. So you kind of pick things that are most probably capable or most likely to succeed, and kind of put all your research into that. This event gave us an opportunity to look at a lot of different things all at once. And there were a lot of things that were really surprising. And that goes for the technology as well as the players involved. So there were some companies, like John said earlier, that we knew, and some that we didn't know. There were some independent citizens that just saw the announcement and entered, without professional connection to the 3D printing community or the Air Force or anything. And that was great. That provided totally outside perspective, and some things that we hadn't really thought of before. And there are some companies that we were familiar with, but maybe not in the same way that they presented during the event. So I think that variety and exposure to previously unknown technologies or companies was really exciting to watch.
How about you, John?
I think so. I'm a big fan of challenges in general. I think I met Joel, I think actually many years ago. He was part of a challenge that we ran for on MT Connect, and he developed this Google Glasses application. That's probably 6-7 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, it's been a while now. Yeah.
So I think just the approach that was taken to investigate these different spaces, technically, we know there's technical gaps that exist, but to be able to create them in a way that people could, take a step. So I think I really like just the overall, challenge methodology that was utilized. It got a lot of people engaged, kind of to Lily's point. Some we knew, some we didn't. But it's a great way to get a better understanding really quickly. And you get to see, what people care about, where their interests lie. So I think, my overall takeaway from the event, that was, it's just a different way of thinking about getting information from the community who are, wants to or is capable of working against a problem set that you identify. And they want to do it for a whole host of different reasons, whether it's to show that they can do it better than somebody else, or to just give it a try and see how it works out in the end. It's just it's a different dynamic, which was really, really cool to see over the course of the week-long event.
Thanks, John. Joel, any thoughts there on what sticks out to you?
Yeah, well, what I gotta say is, like, what a year to do an event like this, because like everybody was remote, and it was chaos, but I think it all came together. And the RSO did an amazing job. America Makes, the Wright Institute, University of Dayton. I mean, just the whole media team that was part of the RSO. I mean, putting all that together, and it was like one of the best, like, because we're all attending like lots of virtual events, and some are better than others, but that one was great. Like, it really put together. It was engaging, the way they had the different speakers and things like that. So that was a lot of fun. And because you didn't, like, when I first heard about it, it's like, oh, cool, this will be like, you go on site and you're doing, you're there for weeks or a week, and you're doing all this, the solution. But since COVID hit, it was like everything's going to go remote, and so how is this going to pan out? And so anyway, just a fantastic thing. And so it just proves like an event like that can actually be very impactful. And so we had a great time.
Yeah, and I'll add on to this question as well. Building on what Lily said, some of the events really opened our eyes to some new companies, or companies that we'd heard of out there that we knew, maybe they had some claims about, great things they were doing, and we've not had the chance to really look closely at it. And what the event really helped us do is it provided a validation point that says, okay, they've got something that we need to go look at, and now it provides us an opportunity to go and really work with that company, whether it's some sort of collaboration or future projects together. So I mean, those are the types of things that we're looking at AFRL. We're responsible for more the science and technology perspective of advancing these technologies. It gives us these points to tie in with these new companies that we didn't have before. So that's been a great outcome, I think, and we're going to see some great engagements from our perspective moving forward.
I think, Dennis, on that point, I was thinking of this. It's like playing a card game, and I grew up in Michigan, so I played a lot of euchre as a kid. And you have a partner, and you're working with your partner across the table, but you don't know what cards they have. The Olympics was like playing cards with an open hand, so we know that there are partners out on the commercial side, And we always say, oh, we kind of want something in this area. And sometimes commercial companies, don't exactly know what the Air Force is looking for. So they say, well, we have something that's kind of like this. And you do this little dance trying to figure out what the connection points are. And I think this event, doing it in this challenge way, the Air Force put out on the table, here's exactly the kind of thing we want, and you have some time to take what and provide something in specific response to that. So I think in that way we got a closer look at where the potential connection points are, with a specific use case in mind.
Yeah, John, I wonder if you might want to build on that a little bit. You and America Makes, you're in a unique position with industry where, you're very close to the government because of the nature of our public-private partnership, but then you're also on a daily basis talking with all these companies and more. So I'm wondering, where do you see industry taking some of those data points that we're putting out there and saying, we think it's important that we figure out how to get new aluminum alloys, or it's important that we figure out how to reverse engineer in a more efficient and agile manner. Where do you see industry taking some of those data points and some of the themes discussed at the AMO, moving forward?
Yeah, I was about to jump in and build off of one of Lily's points, which is very closely aligned to your question. I think that's one of the hardest things for anyone in industry or even academia to understand is how can they apply either what they're working on or what they know with what some customer, whether it's the US Air Force or anybody else, is actually looking for. And it's not crystal clear a lot. Not even crystal clear. It's not very clear at all sometimes. And it's our ability to connect things back to requirements that, if met, this is of interest to the Air Force. It was a, like you said, it was an open hand. It was putting it out on the table to show this is what we're looking for. And we were able to see how industry very quickly, we had tremendous response across every challenge of people who wanted to play. And you didn't see people who, were trying to hold their cards back to not get engaged. Just look at the diversity of the teams that were involved, from really small businesses to, some of the biggest businesses in our industry participated. And they were wanting to, once presented with the challenge, they're able to respond. So I think it's an interesting, I think we learned a lot from it. Maybe it's things that we knew, but it was a great demonstrator. Sometimes we just need to see it work in order to understand how to take the next step. So I think for us, we're trying to understand how can we build off of what was done. Clear understanding of requirements helps us to take the next step, whether in research or in, transitioning a technology to the point where it can be commercialized. The challenge now is how do we keep building off of this and, keep that clarity in front of everyone so we know what we should be working on. And I think that applies a lot to the academic folks as well. We saw a number of academic teams participate. There's a lot of really smart and capable people out there. It's really about understanding prioritization of a need, and people will go work on that need, appropriately. So, the challenge now is what do we do, and how do we move forward based on what we learned here?
Yeah. Joel, your company is a small business, and I think we know that it can be really challenging sometimes for small businesses to interface with the Air Force or government or even large companies. So I'm wondering how you think AMO might be able to change how you interface with the Air Force going forward, and what it might mean for how you or companies like yours can work with us in the future.
Yeah, we really focus on, like you mentioned, collaboration, like building the team. Even though we're small, you can still connect with larger players, and I think that's what's like a big importance to what the AMO is bringing, because you could see, like this is mentioned, there's a very diverse group of academic, large industry, small business, kind of all coming together and building out solutions. So that's why I think potential, like there's Air Force colliders, there's obviously America Makes and the rest of the manufacturing USA groups are really that environment to come together to break down those walls and actually provide that collaboration. And that's where like I have been involved in many years now and have been excited to make those connections, because otherwise if there's not events like these, you don't have those kind of amazing things happening.
Yeah. So maybe shifting gears a little bit, I'll ask this to Lily. How do you think the AMO and what we've done here is going to change how the Rapid Sustainment Office engages with non-traditional partners going forward? And I assume we don't want this to be a one-off type of engagement, but what do you think that means in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of this event, like the gears in my head were already spinning. So there are a couple of answers to that. One is directly, what do we do with the results of this event? And one of the things it does is, this gave us really quickly like a vetted pool of really capable people who have interest and passion and technical savviness and something really to offer the Air Force. So when we think about where we want to go in the future, and specifically related to this event is the RSO's effort to deliver kind of a one-stop shop for 3D printing related stuff to the Air Force. And so that's a collection of capabilities that ranges from reverse engineering to 3D printing and production levels. The things that these challenges were designed to give us information and insight into. So out of this event, we now have a better understanding of what the technologies are, what the players are, and and gives us the ability to really target specific things that we know are out there that we want to see and continue to collaborate with those companies in the future. And I think that the benefit we got out of these events, we want to continue. So, there's going to be another AMO at some point in the future. Can we expand that to some of our other technology interests, work in AR, VR, or robotics, some of these other things that the Air Force is also trying to get into. And it gives us ideas for other sort of challenge ways, to look at data analytics. For example, we've come up with like a March Madness type of bracket style game to look at data and analyze it and give us answers. So it's just given us another way to interface with the community and really get an in-depth look at what some of the opportunities are.
And kind of in a similar vein there, we had a question from the audience. I think you touched on it a little bit. Do we anticipate another advanced manufacturing Olympics? And if so, when might we expect to see that, or what frequency?
Yeah, I think one of the things, we really took to heart the inspiration of the Olympics themselves. We really wanted some physical activity, some games, and that sense of community. So one of the other things we might steal from that is the frequency. Now every 4 years seems a little bit too long because I think we really got something out of it and technology changes too quickly. But maybe an annual event like some of our other typical conventions and events are, for this sort of event might be too fast. So we might look at something that's more along an every other year, like the Olympics now have spaced the Winter and Summer Olympics out to do that. And that makes a lot of sense for us for a lot of reasons. So maybe in 2022.
Sounds about right. I mean, there is a lot that goes into it, and I think we definitely we're always looking over the hill at what's the next technology that we need to bring in and integrate, and maybe the next one's not going to be additive, like say it's going to be something that we can't even think of right now that we know we're going to need. So I guess we'll find out here as we move along. So, maybe a question here for John. We talk a lot about how the Air Force is trying to learn from industry and integrate some of these technologies in a coherent way to really impact our sustainment challenges. I wonder if you might be able to talk a little bit about, you know, what industry is doing with some of these things right now, with the reverse engineering, with the some of these new materials. You know, what what is industry doing that we're not maybe thinking about in the aerospace or Air Force, way of thinking?
Yeah, good question. I think the challenges did a great job at scratching the surface of what some of the what industry is doing. And then if you peel back even further into you know earlier research, maybe out of the academics, it's even becomes even more broader and complicated. I think specifically around materials. So I wrote down a couple of things that were big takeaways for us that the challenges addressed. So the qual cert space, the materials space, and the supply chain. So all our entire industry, if you just look at additive manufacturing as an industry at large, is really shifted hard over the last couple of years towards kind of the industrialization of the technology. So we're starting to use it for things that matter. That's why the Air Force has always cared about it, but it's much closer to the point that it actually matters whether on a plane, train, or automobile. It's starting to go into actual products. So with that, you're getting a lot more people engaged. You're getting a lot more, of the traditionals engaged who are starting to use the technology. So it's really interesting as those folks are getting coupled with, maybe folks who were only additive centric from the beginning, but in particular, the material space is still I'm trying not to say the word challenge too many times, but challenge in our in our world, because one, it's lack of materials data and availability of data. So I was materials hurdles in particular was really interesting to us as we were looking at there's just not that many materials in the additive space that are proven out to the point that we're using them. There's a lot of interest in doing that. There's the balance, though, that there's costs associated with developing it to the point that you understand how to design with the materials. So planting some of those flags like the Air Force did of materials of interest helps industry advance and understand how to where to invest their resources. So I think in some ways that was helpful. The chat, there I go again. The opportunity is to kind of continue to work in that particular space and provide more clarity of where the what materials need to be developed. But on the flip side, there also has to be there's a lot of this that falls on the shoulders of industry to ultimately understand the applications where these whether it's a material or just product that's being developed actually fits in, and where as it becomes as we start to think of industrialization, business case and all of those things really start to become really important. We're not prototyping anymore. We're using this to go on on vehicles of some sort or into product of some sort. So I think there's a lot being done. This helped to get more exposure, continuing to provide clarity of where there's interest from the stakeholder groups, whether it's the Air Force or government or a particular industry sector. The better we're able to do that, the more clarity that it will ultimately exist on the industry side. They'll invest money where it makes sense to invest. That there's been that's been difficult, but I think it's getting more clear as we start to. We just had a panel a couple of, I guess it's now a month or so ago, on the future of AM, and you started to hear some of the stories about what are they looking for. All of that is helping move industry in the right direction.
Great, thanks, John. So I think we have a question from an audience member. We might have touched a little bit on it, but this is a little bit more specific. I would start with Lily here. What do you see as the next steps for companies that participated in the AMO? Do you see contracts through the SBIR program, partnerships? partnerships with us or some of the primes. What do you think that looks like?
Yeah, I think we're now in the process of really going through all of the data that came out of the technical challenges. So we did a lot of testing and we're building basically technical reports for everything that we saw. And out of that, in my mind, there are several categories of sort of future next steps. One is, I mean, we learned that some of these companies that participated are all ready to become vendors for the Air Force. Either something that is ready to go and be integrated, or to be put on contract as a production house basically. So there were several companies in that category. Another one is something that we saw, or an idea. Some of the challenges didn't require the ideas to be already proven out, so we were looking for real innovation. So there are opportunities to further develop those ideas, either through SBIR contracts. The RSO recently opened up a commercial solutions offering contract, so that's more of a broad area announcement type of opportunity. And that opens the doors to not just our small businesses, but the large ones as well. So as we start to really go through the details of the results of the tech challenges, our participants start to fall into each of these buckets. And what we really want to do then is to reach out and say, hey, this thing that you presented at the Olympics is something we're really interested in. Either it's ready to go, or we want to further develop it, or there's some general area that we want to start doing a little bit more research into. And obviously we're working with AFRL to pursue some of those areas as well. So I think there's a range of next steps, and in the next couple of months, when we start to really wrap our heads around what we saw, we'll start to take those steps.
Yeah, I think that speaking for AFRL, I think we see that on our side as well, where we really see, based on some of the submissions, some opportunities for companies to be very competitive in future, SBR or other kind of research solicitations. So, definitely for the companies that are out there, definitely keep scanning for those types of opportunities. I think that there's we're going to maintain heavy investment in additive and advanced manufacturing, and certainly it gives us opportunity to reach out directly to you and make you aware of what some of those opportunities are coming up. So there's likely to be a lot of activity there. I see another question in the thread here. Were there thoughts about linking winning teams to contract awards? I guess I can answer, and maybe Lily can follow up. We did think about that as one method of awarding for successful teams at the Olympics. There's unfortunately there are contracting and legal challenges that don't allow us to just directly award contracts as a result of something like a challenge at the Olympics. But that being said, it definitely opens the door to future interactions, and it's again a validation point that you've got some capability that we really are interested in.
Yeah, I'll pile on just a little bit. I think when we start getting into contracting, that is a traditional element of Air Force acquisition. And there are a lot of rule sets to make the contracts fair and legal. And, in some cases, those are a little bit limiting, which is why, in a bigger sense, the Air Force has some of the problems that they have today. There's a lot of you're playing with the closed hand when you're doing a contract. So not directly ending in a contracts award actually allowed us to get a little bit deeper into what the companies have to offer. It opened up our flexibility for what we could ask the teams to do, and this was all on a volunteer basis, and kind of got us outside of the box that Air Force contracting puts us in. So it would be nice to directly just end in a contract, so we don't have to go through the process after the event to do that. But in some ways, it really gave us better insight and much more flexibility, and hopefully more opportunities to have some fun.
Absolutely. maybe a spin on that question for John. I think we see in the Air Force these opportunities for future engagement. I mean, what do you think that means, or what the value is for the industry side of that equation?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've hit on it a little bit already. Just it feels like more and more, awareness is our biggest challenge. So getting people to understand where the opportunities are, where they should be investing. So we've said this a couple of times, but I think that was really important. I know one of the things that we're doing as part of our involvement in this activity and closing it out is trying to piece together some of the themes that we saw across all of these different challenges, and identify how does the work that was done tie back into the roadmap that we've collectively as an industry been working on for the last 8 years. In some cases, I think we've identified, I don't know that it's a complete hole, plug for a hole, but we've identified some solutions that we need to understand and peel that back a little further to understand what the ask the question of what's next. Where does the tech gap actually exist now that we've uncovered some of these results from the challenges. So honestly, I think that's a role we feel is important that we play, is utilizing the roadmap as that communication device. That it's something that we didn't build it ourselves. We built it with industry. We built it with our government partners and academic partners. So the better we're able to do that, the more valuable that ultimately is to everybody, as they're able to go look at that to understand where are we really at today, where do I need to be focusing. And then I think one last thing that we haven't hit on, and I know we're closing, so I just want to get it in, is the transition kind of communication awareness component to what this event was, to me, was probably the most important thing that happened here. So when you look across the thousands of people that logged into this over the course of the week, you were able to touch a lot of folks, and maybe people that were just trying to understand what's going on in the technology today. And if you start, I started out by saying, qual cert material, yes, those are big technical challenges that we're working through. Supply chain is another large opportunity within our space, and awareness is a big part of that problem. So I think between the videos, which I thought were just amazing, just the way they walk through the actual challenges and their ability to educate the community at large, you can't discount the importance that has, because that brings more people to the community. It brings more, industry becomes bigger when you start to get some of those more conventional manufacturers involved in the technology, because in a lot of ways, they're also, as soon as they understand it, they're gonna move pretty quick, because they understand how to make parts for the Air Force today. They might not make the parts you're thinking about today, or the ones that you want, because they're conventionally forging them or machining them or whatever it might be. As they start to get involved and understand additive, we're going to see a big increase in the capability of that supply chain. So I think you can't discount how impactful that part of the program was.
Yeah, and I think I'll just briefly add on, and this sort of speaks to the partnership that the AFRSO and the America Makes has. The outreach to the community, as AFRSO moves forward with calls for contracting and new sources and new vendors, the Air Force can kind of reach out, and we have a group internal to the AFRSO that does tech scouting and that kind of outreach with industry. And they can do that up to a certain point before contracts, calls go out. So there's an element of outreach there. And so that, combined with the network and the connections that the America Makes community has, we're trying to build our community and our awareness of what's out there. So through those avenues, we have entry points.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much, John and Lily and Joel, who unfortunately I think had some connectivity issues, but really happy to have his perspective as a participant in small business. And I think I'll just close with a plug for where you can find more information on the Advanced Manufacturing Olympics. If you go to the Air Force RSO website, which is AFRSO.com, and browse your way to the Advanced Manufacturing Olympics, there's all the videos for the event are posted, and I really highly encourage you to go check that out because it's a lot of high quality panels, keynotes, and the technical challenges. So with that, I think we are out of time, and I want to thank everybody again for your time.
Thanks, Dennis, for having me.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Lily.